Hi all, today we will discuss about the second application component of Android, that is services. So service is an application component that will be running in the background which will not be having a user interface. Like an activity, service will not be providing a user interface, but it will be running in the background. And another application component can start a service and it continues to run in the background even if the user switches to another application. Additionally, a component can bind to a service to interact with it and even perform inter-process communication, that is IPC. That is, if you want to handle network transaction, play music, perform file input output, or interact with the content provider, these services can do all these things from the background. And a service is created by extending the class service. And mainly there are two forms of service, that is started service as well as bound service. So what is actually a started service? A service is started when the component calls the start service method and it will be running in the background indefinitely. And if you want to stop that service, you have to call the stop service method, or the service can stop itself by calling stop self method. So that is a starter service. You can start the service by using the component calls. The component has to call the start service method, and you can stop it by calling stop service method. The next type of service is bound service. A service is bound when another component calls bind service method. That is, if a client wants to bind a service with it, then it can done that with the help of bind service method. And the client can unbind the service at any time by calling the unbind service method. And service cannot be stopped until all clients unbind the service. That is, if a service has been bounded by more than one client, then you cannot kill that service unless it has been unbinded from all the clients. And a bound service does not run in the background indefinitely. That is, the life of the bound service is the life of the application. Till the application is live, service is also live. Once the application dies off, then the service also will die. And usually we implement on-bind method while using bound services, but we can also use on-start command if we want to continue that service in background. Example is, if you want to play music in background, we can call start service method. But if you want to know the details of the song, we will bind the service that provides information about the current song. Okay, so for seeing how you will see a service life cycle, so this is actually the life cycle of a service. Since there are two types of service, unbound service as well as bounded service, you will be having two life cycles here. You can see it over there. And the service will move from one transition to another transition by using several callbacks. Just like activity, here also we are having several callbacks. So for a unbounded service, the commonly used callbacks are on create, on start command, and on destroy. Only three callbacks are there: on create, on start command, on destroy. And for the bounded service, we will be having some more callbacks, that is on create, on bind, on unbind, on rebind, on destroy. Like that you will be having several callbacks. So these are the commonly used callbacks for the bounded as well as unbounded service. So let's see the detail about each and every callback. So first one is the on start command. So that is actually being used in this unbounded service. So on start command is actually the system will invoke this method by calling start service. That is, when another component requests the service to be started, then the system invokes this method, that is onStart command, by calling start service method. When this method executes, the service is started and it can run in the background indefinitely. And if you want to stop the service, then you have to use the stop self or stop service method. Then the next one is, we will see, that is the first one in the unbounded service, that is onCreate method. So the system invokes this method to perform one-time setup procedures when the service is initially created. If the service is already running, this method is not called. That is, system will invoke this method only once. That is when the service is initially created. So that is when the onCreate method will be called. That is the time at which the service is initially created. Then the service will be running by using the onStart command. And if the service wants to be stopped by itself or a client, then you have to use the onDestroy method. So onDestroy will be invoked when the service is no longer used and is being destroyed. Your service should implement this to clean up any resources such as threads, registered listeners or receivers, and this will be the last call that the service receives. That is, once it is seen that onDestroy callback, then the service will no longer exist. That is, service will shut down. So that is about unbounded service. Next we will see the life cycle of bounded service. So in that, first one is the same thing, that is the onCreate callback, which you already know has been done at the time of initial creation of your service. The next one is the onBind callback. So system invokes this method by calling bind service when another component wants to bind with the service. That is, if another component wants to bind with the service, then this method will be invoked and by calling bind service method. So in your implementation, you must provide an interface that the client used to communicate with the service by returning a iBinder. So that you will see later. And then the clients are bound to the service. And if the client wants to unbind by calling unbind service, then comes the thing that is onUnbind comes. So onUnbind is used when all clients have disconnected from a particular interface published by the service. That is, if it wants to completely remove from the unbinding of the service from the application, then onUnbind has to be called. That is, when all the clients have disconnected from the or unbinded from the service by using unbind service. Then if it wants to rebind, then again it has to use the callback onRebind. The system calls this method when new clients have connected to the service after it had previously been notified that all had disconnected in its onUnbind. That is, once it is said that all the clients have disconnected, after that a new client had connected to the service, then it will publish this by using this onRebind callback. Then onDestroy, which we have already said, that if you want to know if all the services has been unbounded from the application, then you can destroy your service by using onDestroy callback. Once that has been called, then the service will be shut down. So that are the main callbacks that has been used in the service life cycle. And if you want to create a service, there is something that you want to know about it. That is the service is actually being created by using or by extending the subclass of a service, or you can use one of the existing subclasses. And in your implementation, you must override the callbacks that has been needed for it. That is, if you want to use a binder service, then the corresponding callbacks has to be overridden. Or if it is an unbounded service, then the corresponding callbacks will be overridden. So what is actually the features of services is that a facility for the application to tell the system about something it wants to be done in the background. That is, the service will provide the facility for the application to run something in the background. And it also provides the facility for the application to expose some of its functionality to other application. And if you want to create a service, then definitely, as I already said, you have to create a service, or you have to use the existing subclasses of service. After that, you have service needs to be declared in the Android manifest.xml file. Without that, under the tag service tag, without that your service will not work. And in that, the main attribute that you have to look is Android name. Just like an activity here also, the important attribute is Android name. And the implementing class must extend the class service or one of its subclasses. That is about it. And there is something called as service lifecycle. That is, there are two reasons that a service can be run by the system. That is, if someone calls content start service, then the service will retrieve the service, as the system will retrieve the service and then call its own start command method with the arguments supplied by the client. The service will at this point continue to run until content stop service of stop self is called, as I have already said. Or you can start it by means of, or you can bind it with another application and run it in the background. So that is actually the services, the reasons that a service can be run by the system. So I hope you have understood. Thank you.